Speaking of which, I do want to
Mhm,
shift gears because we managed to talk, I don't know what, 6 or 8 minutes without really digging into AI, but there was some big AI news.
mhm.
And I don't know if we're gonna have a difference of opinion on this, but I'm always pretty bearish on some of the regulatory, but the EU passed a regulatory, the first, I guess, AI regulatory framework. It isn't, if I'm understanding this right, it's not actually going to become law for still some time, but anyway, put it out there and it is now passed or approved. And I'm really curious your take on how important this really is, and what you think it means.
So, this the EU rule coming up here. I find it interesting in that I feel like the AI companies in general, whether it be Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, etc., are all asking for guidance on what rules to follow. And so the European Union has at least come out with this Artificial Intelligence Act, which my understanding is kind of like a bill status. They still need to finish reading it, dot the I's, cross the T's, and then actually pass it, although there's a lot of momentum towards passing it. But in at least going through the language at a superficial level, I feel like they covered the basic ideas of um, respecting existing laws, reducing risk, looking at the quality of the data, being transparent, monitoring usage and access to the AI, requiring some sort of human oversight, and then being able to comply with both law and other compliance and governance issues associated with existing data transactions and IT management. So there's there's at least language in there that says you've got to do all these things. We are taking AI seriously, going from uh, data to model building to ongoing oversight. And of
Yeah, I
course,
think.
yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, I think where I struggle, I mean, I think we've talked about this, not this specific thing, but broadly,
Mhm.
I think we were talking about in the context of some of the US stuff. Uh, I'm in favor of frameworks, and it's hard to argue with any of it. I mean, it's sort of mom and apple pie. It's basically, do no evil kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, where I get really concerned is either it's going to just be toothless, or perhaps even worse, it has teeth, and then you just have no idea where that's going to go because so much of this is in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, one of the things they're talking about is it's requiring people in high risk systems like infrastructure or medical devices to assess and reduce risk. Well, what does that even mean, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's who's going to make that judgment as to whether or not that's been done sufficiently. And then they're banning things, um, like emotional recognition systems in schools and workplaces. Well, I mean, does that include intent recognition? I mean, there's all kinds of that's an extremely broad term
Right.
unless there's some other definition. And how could that then get applied, and it really end up stifling innovation? And they're talking about not
Mhm.
using biometrics in public spaces. And I get that on some level, and I guess it depends on what the definition of a public space is, but there are plenty of commercial use cases where I think I'm perfectly fine with, if I walk into a store and I have an account with the store and they can use biometrics where I can just grab what I need and go, kind of a thing, right? Where there's going to be a lot of benefit to that. And so I look at all this and I get it's wild, wild west. I get there's risks, but I'm always wary of regulators who almost never understand the technology putting stuff in place that either stifles innovation or even worse, just slows muckies everything up.
Yeah, I feel like when I look at these rules right now, I feel like what they've actually done from an operational perspective going forward around maintaining logs, maintaining transparency, maintaining compliance with existing law, like all of that, I think is fine and good. I think part of the challenge here is they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle to some extent from a data perspective when you're talking about not being able to profile people based on predictive policy, or not being able to scrape images going forward, especially copyrighted or personally identifiable images. Well, that's great for going forward, but honestly, that's already been happening for a decade, maybe longer, and I feel like a lot of that damage has already been done, or a lot of that activity has already been done. What you're basically doing is uh, calling winners and losers, basically saying the winners are going to be those who got away with doing this before this law came into place. And then no new vendors can actually come into the AI space, which may actually end up meaning that you reify Meta and OpenAI as the kings and queens of AI, rather than let any new vendors in that might actually want to do a more ethical job because their product just ends up being worse in reality.
Well, and we haven't even talked about the fact that half of what they're defining in this you can do without AI, or I guess depending on what type of AI we're talking about. I mean,
Right.
there's so many variables, so many nuances. It just always makes me nervous. I guess you're getting my libertarian bent here on this stuff, but